Most travelers think applying for a Vietnam eVisa takes about 5 minutes. You fill out a form, upload a photo, pay the fee, and wait for approval. And most of the time, that's exactly how it works. But the problem is that small details in the application often get overlooked. A missing middle name, the wrong passport date, or even a poorly cropped photo can quietly cause problems later. Some travelers receive a rejection. Others don't realize anything is wrong until they're standing at the airport check-in counter and the airline refuses to let them board. What makes this confusing is that the system itself isn't complicated. The Vietnam eVisa process is actually quite straightforward. The trouble usually comes from tiny mistakes that seem harmless at the time, but create bigger issues later. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how the Vietnam eVisa application works step by step. More importantly, you'll see the small mistakes that commonly cause delays or rejections, how to avoid unofficial visa websites that charge unnecessary fees, and what immigration officers actually check when you arrive in Vietnam. If you follow the process carefully, getting a Vietnam eVisa is usually smooth and predictable. A few minutes of careful preparation can save you from unnecessary stress before your trip even begins. Why travelers get the Vietnam eVisa wrong? One reason many travelers run into problems with the Vietnam eVisa is that the system looks deceptively simple. At first glance, it feels very similar to systems travelers already know. If you've applied for an ESTA to enter the United States, or filled out a Schengen travel form in Europe, the Vietnam eVisa can seem like the same type of process. You complete a short online application, upload a couple of documents, and wait for approval. Because of that familiarity, many travelers move through the form quickly without paying close attention to the details, and that's usually where things start to go wrong. The Vietnam eVisa system is simple, but it's also very strict about how information is entered. The name on the application must match the passport exactly, including middle names. Passport numbers and expiration dates must be entered perfectly. Even the photo and passport scan need to meet specific requirements. If something doesn't match, the system may reject the application or request corrections, which can delay the process. This surprises many travelers because they expect the system to automatically fix small issues or overlook minor differences. In reality, the system is much less flexible than people assume. In other words, the problem isn't that the eVisa process is difficult. The problem is that travelers treat it like a casual form instead of an official immigration document. Once you understand that difference, the application process becomes much easier to handle. But before you even start filling out the form, there's one step many travelers skip entirely. And sometimes they don't even need to apply for an eVisa in the first place. Check if you even need an eVisa. Before starting the application, there's one step many travelers overlook completely. You should first check whether you actually need a Vietnam eVisa at all. This might sound obvious, but it's more common than you might think for travelers to apply for a visa they didn't need in the first place. Vietnam allows visa-free entry for citizens of several countries, usually for short stays. Travelers from places like Japan, South Korea, and some European countries can often enter Vietnam for a limited number of days without applying for a visa beforehand. Because many travel blogs and forums focus heavily on the eVisa process, some visitors assume it's required for everyone. They go straight to the application form, pay the fee, and complete the process, only to later realize they could have entered visa-free. Even when the cost isn't very high, it's still unnecessary time and money spent on something that wasn't required. Another situation happens when travelers are only planning a very short visit. Some people apply for an eVisa months before their trip without first checking how long their nationality can stay in Vietnam without one. The better approach is simple. Before opening the eVisa application page, take a minute to confirm two things: your nationality and the length of your planned stay. If your passport already qualifies for visa-free entry and your trip falls within that time limit, you may not need to apply at all. But if your nationality requires a visa, or if you're planning to stay longer than the visa-free period allows, then the eVisa becomes the easiest option for most travelers. Once that's clear, the next step is where many people accidentally lose money. And it often happens before they even start the real application. The biggest trap: fake visa websites. One of the most common mistakes travelers make with the Vietnam eVisa happens before they even begin the application. They apply on the wrong website. If you search online for Vietnam eVisa application, the first results you see are often not the official government portal. Instead, many of them are visa service agencies. These companies offer to submit the application on your behalf, which can make the process look faster or easier than it actually is. The problem is that many travelers don't realize they are using a third-party service. At first glance, these websites often look official. They use similar colors, official-looking seals, and phrases like Vietnam Visa Service or Government Visa Support. But behind the scenes, they are simply charging a service fee to submit the exact same application you could complete yourself. This is why some travelers end up paying $80, $120, or even $150 for a visa that officially costs much less. The government eVisa fee itself is relatively straightforward. For most travelers, it's about $25 for a single-entry visa and $50 for a multiple-entry visa. When you apply through an agency, the extra amount you pay is simply their service charge. In many cases, the application still goes through the same government system anyway, which means processing times are not necessarily faster. Another issue that sometimes causes confusion is communication. If something in your application needs to be corrected, the message may go through the agency first instead of coming directly from the visa system. That can slow things down and make it harder to understand what actually needs to be fixed. For most travelers, the safest approach is simple: apply directly through the official Vietnam Immigration eVisa portal. If you're not sure which website is the official one, we've added the correct immigration portal and a step-by-step guide in the description, so you can avoid those fake visa sites. The form is straightforward, and once you know what information to prepare, the process usually only takes a few minutes. And that brings us to the first real step of the application: preparing the documents correctly before you start filling out the form. Okay, so before you even open the application form, it's worth taking a few minutes to prepare your documents properly. This step might seem minor, but honestly, it's where a lot of eVisa applications run into trouble. The most common problems? They usually involve photos. The Vietnam eVisa system requires two main uploads: a portrait photo of yourself and a clear image of your passport's information page. On the surface, that sounds pretty easy. I mean, most travelers already have a passport photo saved somewhere, and snapping a quick picture with your phone feels like it should be enough. But small issues with these images are one of the most frequent reasons applications get delayed or even rejected. For the portrait photo, the system expects a clear image with a plain background, usually white or just very light. Your face should be centered and easy to see, without strong shadows or any objects in the background. Photos that are too dark, heavily cropped, or taken from an angle can sometimes cause problems during the review process. One small tip here: just keep the photos simple. Use a clear headshot with a plain background and a standard image file, like JPEG or PNG. Avoid heavy editing, filters, or unusual cropping, because those sometimes cause upload problems in the system. A blurry or heavily compressed photo can also cause issues. Even if the image looks fine on your phone, the system may flag it as unclear during review. Now, the passport scan is just as important. This should be a clean image of the page that contains your photo and personal information. If the photo is taken under strong lighting, glare from the passport page can actually cover key details, like the passport number or expiration date. Cropping the page too tightly can also hide parts of the document that the system expects to see. A lot of travelers only discover these issues after submitting the form and getting a request to correct the images, which can really delay the approval process. A better approach is to prepare both files carefully before you even start the application. Use a well-lit space, keep the passport page flat, and make sure all the information is clearly visible. For the portrait photo, a simple headshot against a plain background usually works well. Once those files are ready, the next step is filling out the application form itself. And honestly, this is where a few small typing mistakes can quietly cause bigger problems later. Once your documents are ready, the next step is filling out the eVisa application form. At first glance, it looks pretty simple. Most fields just ask for basic details like your name, passport number, nationality, and travel dates. But honestly, this is where a lot of applications quietly run into problems. The Vietnam eVisa system is super strict about matching the information in your passport exactly. Even small differences can cause the application to be rejected or require corrections before approval. One of the most common mistakes involves middle names. Many travelers are used to forms where middle names are optional, so they leave that field blank or shorten their name. However, if your passport includes a middle name, it usually needs to appear exactly the same way in the visa application. Another frequent issue is the passport expiration date. Because passports are often valid for many years, some travelers quickly type the date without double-checking it. A single incorrect number can make the passport appear invalid in the system, which may delay processing or cause the application to be refused. Another detail travelers sometimes overlook is the arrival date in the application. Your visa usually becomes valid starting from that date. If you try to travel earlier, the airline may not allow you to board the flight. So, it's really important to choose an arrival date that realistically matches your travel plans. Spelling mismatches also create problems. This sometimes happens when travelers use a shortened version of their name, a nickname, or slightly different spelling from what appears in the passport. Even a small difference between the application and the passport can trigger a review. The safest way to complete the form is to enter each detail slowly and compare it directly with your passport. Many travelers find it helpful to keep the passport open next to them while filling out the application so every field can be verified before submitting. Taking an extra minute to double-check these details can prevent unnecessary delays later. There's another small detail many travelers forget. After submitting the form, the system gives you a registration code. This code is important because you'll need it later to check your visa status and download the approved eVisa. Some travelers close the page without saving it, expecting the visa to arrive by email. Before leaving the page, take a moment to save the code or screenshot it. It's a small step that can save a lot of trouble later. But even if all the information is correct, there is another small detail in the application that often confuses travelers: choosing the correct entry point into Vietnam. Choosing your entry port. This is kind of a hidden detail. The application asks where you plan to enter the country, like an international airport such as Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, or Da Nang, or one of the approved land border crossings. Many travelers rush through this field and just choose an airport randomly, assuming it doesn't matter. But the entry point actually becomes part of your official visa record. In most cases, entering through a major international airport works smoothly. However, the safest approach is to select the location you genuinely expect to use. It's also important to choose a port that accepts eVisas, since not every border crossing supports this visa type. Once that detail is set, the next step is paying the visa fee. And this is where a lot of travelers misunderstand the real cost of the Vietnam eVisa. Step 4 is paying the visa fee, and honestly, this is where many travelers get confused. If you search online, you might see websites quoting prices of $80 or even $100 for a Vietnam visa. That makes some travelers assume the visa itself is expensive. But the official government fee is much lower. For most applicants, the price is $25 for a single entry visa and $50 for a multiple entry visa, paid directly through the online application system using a debit or credit card. So why do some websites charge more? Those are usually visa service agencies that submit the application on your behalf and add their own service fee. One important thing to remember is that the eVisa fee is generally non-refundable, even if there is a mistake in the application. Once the payment is completed, your application officially enters the processing stage. And this is where traveler expectations don't always match reality. Processing time reality. After submitting your application and paying the fee, the next step is waiting for the visa to be processed. Many travelers expect approval to happen almost instantly, sometimes within a few hours. But the Vietnam eVisa system usually takes longer. In most cases, the standard processing time is around 3 to 5 business days, and weekends or public holidays are typically not included. Because of that, applying too close to your departure date can create unnecessary stress. If you're already traveling soon and don't have enough time for normal processing, there are also a few trusted visa assistance services that can sometimes help speed things up. We've listed those options in the description as well. Some travelers submit their application just a day or two before their flight and then realize the visa hasn't been approved yet. A safer approach is to apply at least 1 or 2 weeks before your trip. This gives enough time for processing and leaves room to fix any mistakes if corrections are needed. When the visa is approved, you normally check the result through the application portal using your registration code, and then download the eVisa document. But even after approval, there's one small step travelers often overlook before heading to the airport. Once your eVisa is approved, you can download the visa document from the application portal. At this point, many travelers assume the process is completely digital and that the visa will automatically appear in the immigration system when they arrive. But it's still important to bring a printed copy of the eVisa. Airlines sometimes ask to see the visa before boarding the flight. If the airline staff cannot confirm that you have a valid visa, they may refuse boarding, because the airline would be responsible for returning you if immigration denies entry. It's also a good idea to save a copy on your phone or take a quick screenshot, so you have a backup if the printed version gets lost during your trip. When you arrive in Vietnam, Immigration officers will simply check that the visa details match your passport and that the visa is still valid. If everything matches, the process is usually quick and straightforward. But many first-time travelers still wonder what actually happens when they land in Vietnam. So, what actually happens when you arrive in Vietnam with an approved visa? In most cases, the process is very straightforward. At immigration, the officer will simply check your passport and your printed visa to make sure the details match and that the visa is still valid. If everything looks correct, your passport will be stamped and you can continue into the country like any other arriving traveler. For most visitors, the entire process only takes a few minutes. At larger airports like Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City, immigration lines can occasionally get busy. If you want to move through the airport faster, some travelers choose a fast-track arrival service. We've also included a link in the description explaining how that works. In fact, the biggest problems with Vietnam visas usually happen before the trip, during the application itself. Rushing the form, entering small mistakes, or using the wrong website can all create unnecessary travel stress. But when the application is done carefully, the arrival process is normally smooth. If you're planning your Vietnam visa now, there's one more thing worth checking. Many travelers make small mistakes that cause their eVisa to be rejected. So if you want to avoid visa problems completely, watch our Vietnam eVisa mistakes guide next.